All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're cracking open a seriously chilling case file known as Route 13, the Bus Between Worlds. We're going to look at a meticulously documented urban anomaly that perfectly disguises itself as just a mundane late-night commute. We're unpacking a survivor's first-hand account of something hiding right in plain sight, a phenomenon that literally preys on exhausted commuters who are simply trying to get home. We'll be breaking down the timeline, the bizarre environment, and the terrifying mechanics of a vehicle that absolutely should not exist.
Now, every city has its own urban legends, right? We're starting with the myth of Route 13. This is an impossible route, firmly denied by the city's transport authority. Officially, their bus routes run from 1 through 12, and then they skip straight to 14. No 13. But what makes this specific case file so fascinating is the tangible audio evidence. See, when the survivor called the transport authority to investigate, the rep stated in this totally flat tone that Route 13 never existed. Yet, faintly, in the background of that official recorded phone call, the survivor could clearly hear the very distinct sound of a bus engine idling. It's this perfect, creepy example of a bureaucratic denial layered right over a very unsettling physical reality.
So picture this. The anomaly first began to manifest on a freezing November Thursday. Our commuter had just missed the last real bus by exactly 4 minutes. They're stranded, they're cold, and they're doing that mental math on the painful cost of a late-night taxi. And that is exactly when a mysterious bus bearing this specific route number, 13, arrived. And it didn't come from the wrong direction, like some out-of-service vehicle. No, it pulled up right on time, exactly when and where our stranded commuter needed it most, complete with a long, tired hiss of its brakes. Looking at the timeline of this ordeal, we can really map out how time just seemingly froze inside this tightly compressed window. The boarding happened at exactly 11:47 p.m. What follows is this bizarre span of time where the commuter's phone clock remained completely deadlocked while a seemingly endless sequence of horrific events played out. Finally, the escape occurs at 11:58 p.m. This crazy temporal distortion, it's a major hallmark of this anomaly. Section 1. The boarding. Transitioning to the anomaly. Let's look at how the totally ordinary environment of Morrow Street shifted into something deeply, deeply wrong. Okay, the second our commuter steps on, it is just red flag after red flag. First, you've got the driver, an older man in a standard Navy uniform, but he's completely unresponsive, just staring straight ahead, even while the bus is parked. Second, the commuter goes to tap their travel card, but the reader is totally dead. No beep, screen is black. But the most alarming shift happens within just 30 seconds of the bus moving. The windows literally stopped showing the familiar city streets and began displaying these impossible narrow buildings with windows in completely the wrong places, all bathed in a sickly orange glow. Moving into part 2, Anatomy of the Anomaly, Passengers in Stasis. Let's break down the deeply disturbing physical state of the other commuters on board. There were exactly 6 other passengers spread out across the bus. 6 people. And the crucial detail you have to understand here is that they were all sitting upright, facing forward, and remaining unnaturally, perfectly still. The survivor makes a very specific point in the case file. These people were absolutely not asleep. You know how it is when people sleep on transit? Their heads loll, they slump, their breathing actually dictates their posture. But these 6 individuals, hands resting flat in their laps, eyes wide open, staring completely blankly ahead. I mean, imagine sitting inches away from this. Our commuter actually tries speaking to a woman in a green coat sitting across the aisle, just desperately asking for directions. Total silence. She was entirely unresponsive. And the horrifying confirmation came when the bus passed beneath a streetlight. A full beam of bright orange light washed directly across her face and nothing. Her unblinking eyes and frozen posture completely defied physical motion and light. She didn't flinch, she didn't breathe, she was entirely locked in time. Part 3. The rules of the stops, impossible locations. As the bus rolls on, reality outside shifts dramatically, bringing us to a sequence of terrifying, impossible places. This thing ran on a really creepy, almost mechanical protocol at each of these phantom stops. First, a ghost chime would ring, a stop requested by absolutely nobody. Next, the doors would hiss open to a totally vacant alien landscape. Then the bus would just wait. Doors wide open, letting the freezing air in for almost 30 seconds, almost as if it was waiting for something out there in the dark to get on. Finally, the doors would close and the impossible journey just mechanically resumed. And look at the actual stops themselves. It's a total masterclass in environmental wrongness. The doors hold open for an agonizing 30 seconds, while the digital clock on the commuter's phone is still just frozen at 11:51. First stop, an empty pavement with 0 road markings. Second stop, a vacant field where a child's swing is moving entirely on its own with absolutely no wind. The third stop featured a single isolated house where a face was pressed flush against the upstairs glass just watching the bus. And maybe the most surreal of all, a stop that was simply black, still water, with a bus stop sign rising directly out of a dark lake. It's completely impossible. So driven entirely by fear at the fourth stop, our commuter begs to be let off. And finally, the driver looks in the rearview mirror and delivers the fatal unspoken rule of this anomaly. He states, in a voice as dry as old paper, that sure, anyone can get off, but you have to get off at the right stop. If you get off at the wrong one, well, he didn't actually finish the sentence. He just turned back to the road, leaving our survivor with an absolutely impossible high-stakes choice.
Part 4. The Escape. Breaking the stasis. Let's look at the climax of the file, leading to the survivor's split-second, desperate attempt to break free.
Check out what was happening on the digital display up above the driver. Earlier in the ride, it was looping this deeply sinister warning, next stop where you don't want to be. But suddenly, the display shifted. It started flickering, trying really hard to push through a damaged signal, and it simply read, home, home, home. It was literally the only thing in that cold, silent environment that seemed to be actively trying to help them. The moment the survivor decided to trust that flickering signal and hit the bell, they triggered a horrifying collective reaction. The ghost chime rings out, but this time the stasis broke. All 6 of those passengers turned their heads to look directly at the survivor in perfect unison. Their eyes still didn't blink. Their mouths were completely shut tight. Yet, the survivor documented this overwhelming absolute certainty that every single one of those frozen passengers was screaming at them in absolute silence. They make a frantic exit back into reality, escaping literally seconds before the anomaly vanished. The doors hiss open, and miraculously, outside is Linden Road, the commuter's normal, everyday stop. They sprint onto the pavement, the cold air hits their lungs, and they refuse to look back to see if those silent, screaming passengers are watching. Once the sound of the engine finally fades, they turn around. There are no taillights driving away. The bus hadn't driven off. It had completely dissolved into the night air. Finally, Part 5, the aftermath, discrepancies and warnings. We've got to look at the lingering time discrepancies and the digital footprints left behind. Get this. Despite the immense psychological weight of an ordeal that felt like nearly an hour of looping, impossible stops, the survivor checks their phone once they get safely inside. It was 11:58 p.m. They realized they had been missing for only this exact, terrifyingly brief number of minutes. 11. The time dilation inside Route 13 literally compresses what feels like an eternity of dread into just a tiny fraction of a normal commute. Fast forward 2 years, the survivor falls down an internet rabbit hole and discovers the online footprint of the only other known person who documented a silent driver and successfully found their right stop. Scouring these obscure forums dedicated to strange city experiences, they find a total stranger describing the exact same 13 bus, the exact same silent driver, and the exact same flickering LED display promising home. They are the only 2 documented individuals to have ever escaped. Every other attempt to find survivors, it's been met with absolute silence. As we wrap up this explainer, we really have to pause and consider the horrifying, permanent fate of the trapped commuters. People like that unblinking woman in the green coat. The survivor actually admits they think about those 6 people all the time, the ones who never got to find the right stop. Are they still on that bus right now, trapped in stasis, passing through streets that literally do not exist, endlessly waiting for a chime that means home? I'm going to leave you with the survivor's own stark warning about what you must immediately do if a perfectly timed, impossible vehicle arrives for you after midnight. Keep this case file in mind the next time you find yourself waiting alone in the dark. Let the wrong bus pass. Because if you get on, will you ever be able to find your right stop? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. I'll catch you on the next one.